So what if anxious attachment isn't the problem you think it is? A lot of people are out here Googling, how do I fix my anxious attachment? How do I heal my anxious attachment? How do I become less anxious? What if that's really just the fruit of the issue? And in this video, we're going to get to one of the roots of the issue. If you're new here, welcome back. My name is Travis, and this is a space for sensitive and thoughtful e-cousins to figure out life and love together on the Percy Ponders podcast. Now, when it comes to anxious attachment, your boy knows a thing or two about it because I have had to work to really heal my anxious tendencies over the years in a relationship. And what people don't discuss is how your anxious tendencies can also backfire into friendships, into your career, because what really is that anxious pattern? It's this pattern of believing that relationship is unsafe without me micromanaging everything through hypervigilance and anxiety. It's trust issues on steroids. It's I don't trust people to meet me without doing the absolute most to make this thing work. I don't trust good things to find me without overcompensating. I don't trust that the good love or the good people will stay without me clinging and seeking an ungodly amount of reassurance to feel safe. And we're going to get to the bottom of 3 things that have really helped me in addressing the root rather than the symptom of anxious attachment. But it's important to understand where this comes from. A lot of us are quick to judge our attachment style if it's anything less than secure, and I've talked about attachment styles in other videos, check those out. And it's like, well, this served a purpose. You're not this way for nothing. Your attachment style is a symptom of an attempt to get your needs met. First, as a kid, you were in a really vulnerable state. And once upon a time you learned, okay, my needs won't be met unless I do the most, unless I compensate with anxiety. And then we fast forward and we see how that manifests. We see how it can push good people away. We see how it corrupts your peace. We see how it makes you a bundle of stress. So what can we do instead of focusing on the anxiety and trying to relieve the anxiety? Well, first, we ground. We regulate our nervous system. We don't talk nearly enough about how so much healing happens from a bottom-up approach, which in psychology has to do with body awareness, sensory awareness. Soma means body. Somatic awareness is about body awareness and being mindful of the ways in which stress connected to, oh my gosh, they didn't text me back, or they're being weird, or I'm not getting the response I want. Stress. This feels uncertain. Right? That stress, being mindful of how that stress can manifest in the body. Maybe your mind starts to race when things feel uncertain. Maybe you get sweaty palms. Maybe you get a pit in your gut. Maybe the butterflies devolve into chaotic. What does that look like for you? And once we understand what that looks like for you, we get to figure out, okay, how do we ground? Because one thing I'm learning is a mark of maturity, a mark of taking accountability for anxious tendencies, a mark of maturity for taking accountability for the way you are in relationships is knowing, okay, I don't have hard conversations with people. I don't send unhinged texts, right? I don't say or do things I will regret, even when things feel tense in relationships. Instead, when I feel triggered, like a triggered Tina, what I do is I ground. And how do we ground? There are all sorts of different somatic practices we can use to ground. And in understanding neuroscience, there is what's called sympathetic, which is fight or flight responses to stress, and then parasympathetic, which is a restive response to stressors. And what can be more stressful than relationships? And so we can do all sorts of different parasympathetic activations that ground. And this creates what's called a ventral vagal response. So Some of those things can look like rocking, humming. Mm. It can look like going on a wellness walk instead of sending the unhinged text. It can look like activating the happy neuromodulators in your brain by going for a run or working out, dancing. These things help you to ground and get embodied so that you aren't just operating on adrenaline and stressy triggers, because relationships are very triggering. So instead of lashing out when you feel triggered by someone who's avoidant or mishandling you or not giving you what you want, your first response can be learning to ground. And this isn't something most people were taught as kids, but this is something that mature adults start to do. And the more you ground, the more you increase your capacity for the discomfort of relationships. Which brings us to number 2. There's a whole lot we can do again to ground and become our own solid island of a person in relation to others. But there's also improving your picker, right? Can we be honest here? How often would you just be happy in your relationships if you improved your picker? You know what I'm saying? Picked emotionally available people, pick people who are interested in giving you what you want, pick people who don't play games, pick people who communicate well. I've talked about this in other podcasts, how for a lot of us, our innate type is our trauma. Because if you look at attachment theory, it's a theory of how we learn to first relate with our primary caretaker. And so when we don't examine those patterns, we carry them in to our adult romantic relationships. And that's why a lot of people seek out not what is in their best interest or what is most innately attractive, but really what is familiar. We all know that one friend who gets the ick whenever they meet the good guy, but gets the yum yum for the bad boy. That's attachment stuff. So much stress, so much unease can be eliminated and alleviated by simply improving your picker. It sounds wild, but it's not. It's not. And we can also talk real quick about how one thing emotionally unavailable people will do, one thing folks with avoidant tendencies will do, when they have the opportunity to offer you clarity, when they have the opportunity to talk things out with you rather than shutting down, what an emotionally immature person will do with avoidant tendencies is they will shut down rather than providing clarity, rather than leaning into repair after rupture in a conflict. They will shut down, and that can be very manipulative. When you know that your partner or someone you care about most craves clarity and conversation and co-regulation, right? Like, let's work this out together. Let's look into each other's eyes. It releases oxytocin, right? When you know your partner craves that most and you deny them that, whether it's intentional or not, that's low-grade manipulative. And a lot of anxious people, a lot of good-hearted people, when they have poor partner selection, find themselves in relation to people who shut down in conflict and misunderstanding, rather than leaning in with curiosity and understanding. You can't have a healthy connection with someone who does that. And people can grow and heal out of those avoidant patterns, but the writing's pretty much on the wall whether or not someone's trying. And if they're not trying, well, we know how to deal with that. We don't. We keep it moving. We live in abundance. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people who don't give you special treatment aren't special. They're a dime a dozen. These men who don't treat you right, these men with avoidant tendencies, these men who are a good time and good looking but not much else, these men who shut down like ice blocks when it's time to have a hard conversation that will move the connection forward, they're not special, my friend. They're like the local bus. There's going to be another one every 5 to 10 minutes. Keep it moving. Here's the final thing when it comes to healing anxious tendencies is the importance of self-sovereignty. What is a self-sovereign person? Think of self-sovereignty as the person who isn't the Earth or Pluto or Mars, but they are the sun of their own Milky Way galaxy. What does it take to be the sun of your own Milky Way galaxy? As somebody who used to anxiously revolve around everyone else, and need so much reassurance to feel all right. It's like you're checking in on the gravitational pull of everything around you to make sure you're okay constantly. That's anxiety. Where self-sovereignty is, oh wait, no, I'm going to be the grounded sun. Come on, somebody. A self-sovereign individual. What is the composite character of a self-sovereign individual? For starters, it's somebody that has a rich and fulfilling life on their own, so that they're not putting themselves in a compromising position to be taken advantage of or exploited by somebody who is not good for them, will emotionally manipulate them. A self-sovereign individual makes sure they have friendships, make sure if they don't like their job is working on doing something they enjoy with their time. A self-sovereign individual is somebody who has hobbies. A self-sovereign individual is somebody who's working on validating themselves, so that you aren't impressed when somebody comes along your Instagram DMs and says, oh my God, I think you're sexy. I think you look good. I think you're so special. I think you's kind, you smart, you's important. A self-sovereign individual isn't impressed by those bare minimum compliments because you've been working on validating yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you feel me, you feel me. Let me know down in the comments. So healing anxious tendencies is less about focusing on the anxious attachment and more about focusing on cultivating the habits and routine necessary to be regulated, to improve our picker, our partner selection, and to be self-sovereign individuals who can stand on our own 2 feet. Here's the last thing here I want to pass along, and let me know what your experience is with this down in the comments, e-cousins. I had no clue that working on healing my anxious attachment by way of working on becoming more grounded and self-regulated would spill over into other areas of my life, like my career. No one told me that. No one told me that you work on your anxious tendencies and all of a sudden you're better in business because you're better at detaching. You don't give off desperate, needy vibes when you have a deal on the table that you really want because you're doing things to set yourself up to have more opportunities than you need. Same thing with when you're looking for a job. Same thing with when you're looking for new friends. I had no clue that working on healing my anxious attachment through working on really regulating my nervous system would give me the tools to be more detached, to be more grounded in all these other areas of my life that had nothing to do with romantic love. I'll talk more about that another time, but this work is critical, it's vital. And that's why we have these conversations here, because we're living in the emotional dark ages, and very few people, especially men, talk about this kind of stuff. Would love to hear your thoughts and experiences on this. If you are a heart-centered visionary in a season of grief, growth, reinvention, on the professional front or personal front, comment, ponder down below to learn more about the coaching program I run for folks like you, and pass this along to a homie. Talk soon.